Matthew. Okay, and we will be recording, but we're not going to have anybody's video on there or anything like that, so no worries. Welcome again to Dallas Job Seekers Club. Today we are lucky to have our Ask a Career Coach series with local career coach Christine Horstman. Today's topic is resume refresh. Thank you all so much for coming, and I will go ahead and turn it over to Christine.
Hi, it's nice to see everyone. I see some familiar faces and some new faces and names, and I'm thrilled to be back here with the Dallas Public Library. I think this has been such a great series. Once upon a time, a long time ago, I was a reference librarian, so I know how much our libraries do for the community in ways that actually a lot of our citizens don't realize. So it makes me really happy to be a part of it. So I am Christine Horstman. I am a certified professional coach, certified career coach, and professional development instructor. So today, resume refresh. So whether you are looking for a job, and I know most of the folks with us are actively looking for jobs, and with COVID, so many people are in that boat. But no matter what, that old maximum, you always need an updated resume, it really is true. This last year, I got asked for my resume. So it is a way that people vet you professionally. This is such a good time of year to do a little cleaning up if you are currently employed. It's hard when you have to go back several years and try and think of stats and figures and what you've accomplished. So it's a smart habit to get into of kind of a year-end review, if you will, of what have you accomplished professionally and capture that information. So today we're going to be talking, actually, if you want to put in your chat, and then Hannah, you guys can let me know whether or not, we have any recent graduates here, any parents who are re-entering the workforce after, maybe being a caregiver or stay-at-home parents, or you're just, looking for a new job or a new, we talked about career transitions and changes last time. So just if you want to pop it in the chat and let us know exactly where you are in your career trajectory, that'll help us too. So for new graduates, assuming we may have someone on the line who's a new grad, you're going to stick to the one-page resume. It is okay to put your education first. It's your biggest accomplishment, sort of professionally, so to speak, to date in most cases. And an emphasis on extracurricular activities is okay, especially anything that is working on teams, working in the community, clubs and organizations where you have leadership positions. Again, you want to start thinking transferable skills. So leadership, organizing, creativity, skills you're used in college, group projects that were of significance, that you can use as a transferable skill as you move into the workforce. If you are relaunching, convey confidence that you've kept current. So any kind of certification or training program that you could highlight, also volunteer or civic activities, again, especially if they're in leadership positions, or good transferable skills towards your industry to show that you've been using your professional skills while you've been out of the workforce and staying brushed up and current. Any associations that you might be a part of, that can also be helpful to list, to where you show that you're really currently engaged in your industry and you're not out of touch or really so far out of the loop. For those of us that are looking for a job or actively seeking a career change, either we're out of work or we know maybe something's coming up or we've been furloughed, that kind of a thing. If you are changing careers, sometimes people recommend sort of this blended, transitional, functional format of a resume. Stick to as traditional as possible, to where you're highlighting the skills in past positions that are transferable. Functional resumes tend to be a little bit of a red flag that someone's kind of diverging to people. So stick to that traditional chronological resume, and we'll be looking at those today. But again, if you're going through changing industries, I know some people are having to cast a much wider net because of COVID. Your industry may be very repressed right now. So again, focus on transitional skills, added education that you're doing while you're unemployed, certifications, again, can be very helpful. Again, same thing with the civic involvement, any professional organizations you're involved in. Okay, so for me, as I said,
Christine?
the only real, yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to let you know we did get some responses in the
Great.
chat here. So yeah, we've got, looks like a lot of the people responding are career changers, and also someone who's revamping their career with a gap in their career. So those are, that's what we're looking at today.
Okay, great. And we can remind me to come back to that sort of at the end with
Yeah.
questions about the career gap, because a lot of times that gives people a lot of anxiety. So let's remind me to make sure we kind of talk about that a little bit more.
Sure.
But even if you're transitioning to, you know, to make the old pivot that we're saying all the time right now with COVID, try to stick to a more chronological resume, but make it very focused in terms of telling your career story, in terms of your summary, job titles, key skills, and what you highlight as those bullet points under the resume. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. And really our goal is to make it easy for the hiring manager. They're seeing hundreds upon hundreds of resumes coming through, of those that still get through to an actual person, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. But tailor your resume to the job. Job seekers don't always like to hear this because it's more work. You might need more than one version of your resume. You are going to have to fine tune those bullet points depending. Any job that gets you really excited, that you are like, oh my gosh, I would just die if I got this. I want this so badly. Spend that extra time to really tailor that resume, and as much as you can for everything that you're applying to. But use a spreadsheet to stay organized. So I'm going to recommend that you save your resume really clearly so that it's your first initial, last name, the actual job title, and then resume. So that, you know, a recruiter might be recruiting for more than one position, right? Make it simple for them to find you, keep you in the top of mind when they're going back to people. I just had someone who got hired, interviewed. We did like a lot of mock interview training about 2 months ago. She got 3 rounds of interviews. She didn't get the job. She loved the organization. She kept checking back. Guess who just got hired by them, right? So keep that resume so it can be top of mind for people so that you are saving it in a way that's logical for the hiring manager. Keep a spreadsheet, you know, if you're applying to a lot of things, so you know which version you sent to whom, right? Especially when you're applying online, so that when you go to the interview, you can prep really concretely from the exact resume that you highlighted for them, so that you know what you've already highlighted and what you might want to add in and what you might want to accentuate. So be organized, it will pay off. And again, be consistent and reachable. Don't have, you know, unicorn23@gmail as your email address for looking for jobs. You will be so surprised that I see stuff like this all the time on resumes. Make sure that it's professional. And again, they can find you easily when they're going to send you an email. It's all logical. It all's kind of married together. And same thing with your LinkedIn profile. Oftentimes people who are getting interviewed, there's a lot of group interviews. That's been the trend for a long time, but now with virtual, that makes it even easier, right? And with virtual, I'm hearing from more and more clients where the person interviewing them doesn't have their resume, they're looking at their LinkedIn profile. So it's important to add your LinkedIn profile at the top of your resume, and I'll show you some examples. But literally cut and paste that and make sure your LinkedIn has, again, your name in it, that it isn't sort of a long gobbledygook, that you go back and change that in the settings if you haven't already. And again, you would be surprised, but there are more Christine Horstmans in the world than you might imagine. So if I go to find someone in LinkedIn, I may not get to you that easily. So that's why it's important to put it on there so that they know it's exactly the correct person. Okay, so we want to sell ourselves with specifics. Most importantly, I'm using 2 screens, so I look like a weird telecaster today. Sorry that I keep turning my head. But sell yourself with specifics, the impact that you have made. one of the big things that hangs people up when they start to sit down to do their resume is they think they have to all of a sudden speak like a resume. We have this sort of like stilted, overly reserved, professional idea of the language on a resume, a lot of us have, and you will kind of shut yourself down in terms of your brainstorming, your thinking, your creativity, and allowing any of your unique personality to shine through. So try to let go and just try to use your regular voice as much as possible. It's easier to polish it into slightly more formal and more professional when you start from the regular voice. So say it like you would just explain it to someone else that you know. Be careful of jargon. Even in an industry, the person in HR that's first screening you, an outside recruiter, they may not be as familiar with the jargon as you are. And we're going to talk about this more with the ATS systems, the automated tracking systems. They might spell things out completely. They might use an acronym, and you have to account for both situations. Always, always the old maxim of action verbs. This is action, accomplish oriented. And the most important thing is to quantify your results as much as possible. You are trying to show them you have a proven track record that they can assume will show that you'll get good results for them, right? So numbers, percentages, put things in context. You know, your top sales numbers might be smaller compared to a different organization, but put them in context. Anything that is sales, scale, growth, savings in terms of either time or money, improvement and impact. Sometimes in some professions, this is harder to do in hard numbers, but do it descriptively where you can if you don't have hard numbers. And that's why I say it's so good to do this on an annual basis, because it's hard to remember those hard numbers several years down the line. You may have to go back and pick your old coworkers' brains and do some brainstorming with them and ask people to run numbers for you even. Okay, so the second most important piece is really showing your relevance, the value that you bring to the table. Anywhere that you are a subject matter expert, what are you known for professionally? Your top fields of knowledge. You're going to highlight this in your key skills section that we're going to go over. And you want to make sure that this echoes the keywords from the job description. This is so important when it comes down to those automated systems. They are doing an algorithm for keywords. Again, if this is a job you love, you need to go through that job description with a fine-tooth comb. And what I recommend to my clients is to keep a running document of those keywords, phrases that you're like, wow, that sounds really great in that job description, so that over time you can sort of use that, so where you're not using the exact language from their job description in that application, but you start to hone in on the general job description language and words that really resonate for you, so that you can polish and improve your cover letters and your resume as you go along. Another career coach, he does it actually in a spreadsheet form, so that could be helpful too, depending on how your brain works. But you want to accentuate your value. So again, education and training, awards, special projects, achievements, hard skills. Sometimes it's hard for us to think of ourselves this way. I will say women especially, I find I work with a lot of women, tend to overemphasize or put a higher priority on, well, I was only a part of that. This was the whole team, and give more weight to that. Step in, step up, own it, right? Be proud of what you've done, even if it was as a part of a team. Share the recognition of the whole team, but really own what you did too. You don't have to couch it, so really step up and step into it, and brag on yourself a little bit. Hard skills. Soft skills are very important, but then those hard skills that are industry specific, and again, that are listed on the job description. So, and then the next thing what you're trying to do is really charting your career path. Again, like we said, the past is proving the future. You're demonstrating what you've accomplished in the past so that you show that you could do it in the future. And when you're transitioning, especially, you're going to have to sort of help them understand the career arch and how you'll use those skills and attributes for them. but you're going to want to be clear and concise. So for new and transitioning folks, internships are important, right? If you're a student and you've done an internship, you show you've had that professional office experience, leadership and team experience, as I mentioned, again, transferable, both hard and soft skills, relevant coursework and projects that you're going to want to highlight, publications. Sometimes as a student, you are a part of actual professional publications. Nowadays, we all have this amazing ability to publish on LinkedIn and forums like Medium. So you can also showcase those transferable skills by writing articles for places like LinkedIn and Medium, and then you can tout your own horn for it in your resume. So step into being a subject matter expert, step into the new field that you desire to be a part of. Okay, also, if you have more than a lot of experience, 15, 20, or a little bit more experience for those of us that are older, you're going to focus on the last 10 years. Sometimes you might dip into 15, depending on where that relevant experience is. You may want to have experience and then additional experience sections so that it doesn't look like you have a bunch of space in your resume so people see where the continuity is, but you are focusing them on the relevant experience. In that additional experience, you could just really put job title, company, dates that aren't as critical, but you want to highlight those, particularly the last 10 years. And again, focus your story, right? So you might even say, sometimes for some people, it's earlier career, previous roles. I tend to go with additional experience. Additional experience can be helpful too when you're transitioning from industries. And again, you're sort of cherry picking what you're highlighting in experience. But again, you want to showcase some of your other broader generalist skill set and employment history. Especially if you've ever been at like name brand type companies that people will recognize and give you a little clout, for sure you want to highlight those. Okay, then the third part is positioning who you are. This is that personal branding buzz that you hear about all the time, but positioning who you are. We're going to look at this in more detail shortly about using job titles instead of the traditional objective statement to where you are branding yourself already in that job title that you're looking to step into. Again, future focused when you talk in a professional summary at the top, or what would have been a traditional objective. And you're going to make sure you have the actual job title from the job description listed on your resume. Again, for that keyword algorithm that the automated systems are using. And I'm going to show you all some examples in just a moment. In that summary statement, or as I said, what often was called an objective statement, your objective is to get this job that you're applying for, right? So I don't really like the objective statement idea because this is my objective. I'm applying to this job and I want to get it. So the summary where you're sort of explaining that career arc, a little piece of personality if possible, the most relevant skills, again, that branding of who you are and what you're known for. Out of all the marketing executives in the world, why you? What makes you special, right? And so you want to do that by combining strengths, experience, and as I said, a little bit of that personality style. Highlight your years of experience, the type of industry, again, anything that's really unique, anything that's really heavy results driven. You know, if you have turned around 3 organizations, if you have been the top sales professional in your last 2 organizations, those kinds of really big overarching success stories should be in that summary at the top. Okay, so this is a tip that comes from, unfortunately, she passed away, rest in peace, but Christy Bonner, very well-known career coach. This is a tip I picked up from Christy Bonner. She uses a website called TagCrowd, and this can help you find keywords. People use this creating hashtags and other things. You can cut and paste a job description into TagCrowd, and it's going to create an image like this, and it's going to pull out the repetitive keywords and the most important words. So if you're a little bit more visual, if going through those job descriptions, you're finding it harder to pull out the keywords yourself, using something like TagCrowd could be really helpful to help you. You can also put your resume in and see what tags it pulls out compared to the job description. And is it looking compatible, right? Because this gives you an idea of that algorithm that the computers are using, okay? So again, I do this by hand. I go through like with a highlighter or a pen, and I go through and I highlight on a job description, and I highlight on a resume, and I compare this. But this can be a very helpful tool. Okay, so with your resume, make sure that you're going to need a couple versions. You're going to need a very basic Word document that's easy to cut and paste into the ATS system. But you're going to also want a PDF version of it. And again, when I'm telling you tailor this for the different jobs, it's a little extra work. So again, stay organized with it. But an actual human being that pulls out your resume is going to want a PDF version, especially recruiters and HR professionals that are doing recruiting full time. It holds all the formatting because, believe it or not, no matter how many times you check Word, something weird will happen when you send it as an attachment and someone else prints it out or pulls it up on the screen. So PDF it to hold that formatting and keep a nice clean version that looks the way you expect it to. So this ATS system, the automated tracking systems, the vast majority of companies use this. Close to 100% of Fortune 500 companies use it. Larger companies is into the 60s and 70%. Even some smaller companies are starting to use them. So it is so important to be ATS compliant. You're going to find some differing information out there about what is ATS compliant. Err on the side of caution. Go bare bones because it's just safer. You can have that prettier version on PDF that you attach and you send to actual people. Do not use a header or footer section. A lot of times people do this to try and maximize space. It can't read the header or the footer section. So if they don't see an email, they don't see your name, right? You've already lost critical information that can count against you. So don't use a header or footer. Don't have hyperlinks. So this is important if you're someone in a more artistic design industries where you have a portfolio that you might be linking people to. For your LinkedIn that I'm telling you to make sure you have that LinkedIn address, you need to remove the hyperlink. It's an easy tip is Control K on your keyboard will pull up a hyperlink and you can just say remove link. And then just check the formatting to make sure it's still in the right, color. It's not underlined or something funny from when it thought it was a hyperlink. But no hyperlinks for the ATS. No underlines. You will see some people that say these are ATS compliant formats that you get online. I would not use a line in it. It's just too risky. The stats of how many resumes are rejected from ATS is upwards to 70%, which is kind of horrifying. And right now it is a bit of a numbers game. There's a lot of people looking, right? So don't do anything that might potentially risk it with the ATS system. So no text boxes, tables, or graphics. Again, people are going to like Canva and some of these other places. That's okay for a PDF version that you're going to send to someone, not going to work for ATS. So you're just going to use spacing in caps and bold to create sections, right? So really, really simple. Be sure to, as I said, include that job title on your resume. Some people go so far as to actually say, like we used to do, phone, colon, the number, email, colon, the address, because some ATS systems are programmed to read that. That I think is going sort of the most extreme. But if you're not getting anywhere with your applying, then go ahead and try some of these things and see if it makes a difference, right? So I always mention that while I don't typically do that on the resumes I work with, I do mention it in case you're really struggling to get past the ATS. Again, keywords from the job description, but not just like everything copied from it, right? So you're going to echo those keywords, you're going to sprinkle them throughout, combined with your own language. The other pieces is that keep the dates to the right or on a separate line for the ATS. Anything that's incomplete but required in terms of certification or education, maybe it's MBA preferred or MBA required, and you're completing yours in December of 2020, go ahead and apply and put expected or, awarded December 2020, so that they know you're near completion, right? And so because they'll still see in the keyword the date and the actual required degree or certification, it'll get you past the ATS. Because again, hiring takes some time, right? So don't say I can't apply, just work the system, if you will. Pursuing or anticipated is other words that you could use for those. Keep your credentials in separate lines as well. Nowadays, the most accepted form is not to use periods with things like a BA, CPA, MBA. The most accepted form journalistically is no periods. Again, the most important thing, I shouldn't say again, in my mind I'm saying again, because I was going to tell you this about bullet points, is that, again, right now, it's more modern and thought of to have no periods at the end of your bullet points on a resume. What's important is you're consistent. So if you're doing periods, make sure every single one of them has a period. If you do period after an MBA, make sure you do period after your BA, right? So be consistent. Don't mix crazy fonts and sizes. Keep it to one font, you might have one size for the headers, another for the other, but keep it somewhat simple. For the ATS, you need to both spell out and use the acronym. So things like Microsoft Office, you might spell the whole thing out and then have Office 360 or MS Office, Excel, etc. I would put them both ways when you have space to do so that you're getting through the system. This can also help you if you're having trouble fitting things in with space. So look at how they listed in the job description. If they say MS Office, use MS Office. If you're running out of space, if they spell it out, be sure to spell it out because that's what their system is going to be looking for. And avoid narrow margins. If you go too thin, the ATS won't be reading all of it, what's on the page. Okay, so let's talk about, before I show you some examples, and then we'll have time for questions, let's talk about the three areas that people, the three main areas, but that summary statement people sometimes get hung up on. Again, try to just say it out loud, record yourself, write it out the way you would say it to someone else. But sometimes saying it out loud is an easier way to brainstorm for people. Say it in your normal voice, then you can polish it if you want it to sound a little bit more professional or to match the language of the job description. Again, don't have a stuffy resume with a really hip happening language on a job description, right? I mean, look at the tone of the company and again, try to marry your resume and your cover letter to their style and tone. So, but with that summary statement, again, this is sort of that personal branding, that career arc that you're trying to say in just a couple of sentences. But again, what you're best at, who you serve, and how you do it uniquely, and how that therefore translates to them. Okay, and then what I want you to do, and I mentioned this at the beginning, is where you're kind of really brainstorming your resume. I want you to think about your top 10 successes you've had in life, professionally, personally. Some of your civic successes might be really valuable. If you are in business development, sales, right? And then as a volunteer, you helped raise a significant amount of money. That's important, right? Fundraising is sales. So you can use that as a transferable or something that validates that skill set in another environment. So think of your top 10 successes and then check if they're really accentuated on your resume. Are you holding back somewhere? And lead with the good stuff, right? Don't bury the lead. I see people do this where it's like 6 bullets down, the very best thing. No, that needs to be bullet 1, bullet 2, right? Come out strong because they are scanning. They are not going to read your entire resume. 6 to 20 to 30 seconds. You're lucky if you get 30 seconds on an initial review. So do not bury the lead. Lead with your best material, awards and accolades. Think about the testimonials you've received from people, endorsements and reviews on LinkedIn or recommendations. What do people say about you? Again, what are you known for? Awards you received at work, etc. and portfolio of your work. This can apply even to sales professionals. Back in the day, I started as a sales manager, and I started in sales, moved into sales management. And when I looked for other sales management jobs, they wanted stats. They wanted proof of the numbers that I was saying. Some of that, might be confidential. It's not like you're going to steal things from your, past employer or current employer. But where you can ethically back up your numbers and what you're saying, right? So again, testimonials, thank you letters, statistics, reports, performance evaluations. Keep this in a folder. You may not be like showing it to someone per se, but that portfolio for you that helps you go back and build this and craft your story as well. But in some professions, you really will need to have a portfolio of your work: marketing, design, writing. A lot of companies will ask you to create a presentation and do other things these days. So having some material to fall back on can be helpful. Okay, published articles. Sorry, also that's the other one. Links to published articles. And what I want you to also do, we're going to be talking about LinkedIn later on down the road as a part of the Job Seekers Club, but I want you to also make sure that your LinkedIn takes your resume one step further. So this is where you're adding the vetting yourself for them. So some of this material that I'm saying put in your portfolio, you can actually have on LinkedIn, right? You're going to have testimonials and recommendations. You can link to articles and portfolio work and featured articles in LinkedIn. So you're going to take that to support what's in your resume, because after they look at your resume, if they're going to hire you, chances are they're going to look at your LinkedIn. Okay, so I want you to think stars and stats. Stats I've talked about. Numbers, 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 wherever you can quantify and qualify your accomplishments is so important. And then stars is a common behavioral interviewing technique. This is a way to prep for your behavioral interview. If you start prepping your resume this way, you're one step ahead when it comes to the interview. So you think situation, task, action, result. So as you're trying to craft those bullet points in your resume, and you're thinking of those career highlights after you've done your brainstorming, you're going back to your performance reviews, you're going back to your old job descriptions. Think in terms of situation, task, action, result. That's kind of what you want the flow of those bullet points to look like. And again, you're one step ahead in preparation for the actual interview. Okay, so I'm going to go through a couple examples and then we'll have some time for questions. So some of these, I'm sorry, are a little hard to read. It was hard to do this with the PowerPoint. This is a before and after. Okay, so this is 3-page resume. There's like so much white space. It makes you feel kind of blah when you look at it, right? And you imagine they're seeing these over and over and over again. So from the beginning, we want to sort of get their attention, get some engagement. So you'll see where we switched it up. Just a slight change on the top where her name is, a little bit more stylish, right? Calls to you a little bit differently than the original one. And I'm going to show you a better shot of this. But we're getting rid of that old-fashioned objective statement. This is your objective. This is who you are. This is both job description for the ATS. This is both objective and this is personal branding. HR director, strategic business partner, people manager, leader, and coach. It tells you something about this woman and the very first thing you look at, right? And it's language that sounds a little bit different than, 15 HR professional with 15 years experience, passionate about blah, 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 hard worker, all these things that start to sound a little bit trite when you read it over and over. If you read your job title and your summary statement and you think this could be 10 people I worked with, you've got to freshen it up. You've got to dig a little deeper. Or work with the library or someone like myself to kind of brainstorm it out a little bit. So we're going to move from this branding, and already I'm meeting the first requirement of the ATS because I've ensured I've got the right job title in my here's who I am job title description, then my summary statement, and then I'm going to go into key skills and then my professional experience. Here's an example where we've got the additional experience because she's got a lot of years of experience. to tell a little bit fuller picture, but we don't go into except the most recent, about the last 10 years on this. And then you can see education and associations. That's a good way to put some of those professional organizations, especially for transition, and just to say associations. Okay, so here's another, sorry, that was the side by side. Okay, so you can see her original summary of qualifications. Again, it's not awful, but words like passion is so overused. I mean, it's so hard to not want to say that, but you've got to start to really kind of think a little bit more creatively, and be careful of too much trite jargony words. We switched it up. Oh, sorry, I wanted to show you too. Sometimes people ask what are the best fonts. Stick with the basics. The most common fonts for resume, Times New Roman is a double-edged sword. It is still probably the go-to traditional font, and because of that, people are sick of it. But she's in a more traditional recruiting field of HR, so I think it made sense for her to use the Times New Roman. So I did try to note on these so you can see some of the different fonts, but Times New Roman, Arial, Calibri, Garamond, Helvetica, Georgia. Muna is one of the newer ones, and Avenir Next is a new one that's been popping up in a lot of things. Not everybody has those. In a PDF, it'll be okay, but stick to the basics. So I have tried to highlight that on the screen just so you can see what some of the most common fonts look like if you're trying to figure out the right font for yours. So here's where we switched her to the way we changed this. Compassionate and personable rather than passionate, right? A little bit more specifically descriptive about her, establishing productive business relationships, both remotely and on site. Anything you have done remote work, this is the time to highlight it, right? You've led remote teams, you've led remote trainings, you work with a manager in another office previously. This is the time to highlight that. What type of environment she's been in, describing that. Adapting HR to align people, resources, and policies. The focus on building culture and inclusion. This is hot, hot, hot in HR right now. It happens to be where she really wants to move into and her passion. But even in non-traditional HR, any kind of leadership role, any kind of diversity and inclusion that you can include is important. Working with international people, working with people who speak other languages, broad-based neurodiversity. Think diversity, really big picture when you think of diversity. And then her key skills. You will see in key skills, what I added different than before is we've mixed in soft and hard skills in her key skills based on the job descriptions. They want to know that she's worked with HR information systems, and you'll see how we spell it out and we use the acronym, and then we get specifically which ones. Okay, I'm going to go a little faster because I don't want to run out of time for questions. Here's another example. Someone who has been in recruiting, recruiter, relationship builder, strategist. It just gives you more flavor about someone, doesn't it? And it sounds strong and confident when you lead off with your resume like this. Okay, and then this one I want to show you where this is someone who has been too far out to start with education, and her career path took a twist from her education. She's not working in gaming, so to lead with computer game design confuses the hiring manager, right? So again, focus your story. So we switched it up and we lead again with 3 job descriptions. Hers is a little more straightforward. They're not looking for quite as much personality when you're doing straight up engineering for systems. But we give some personality here when we say experience in configuring, testing, and supporting computer and network systems, whether they're located in a remote station, a vehicle, or in a closet. If you were to be able to see her entire resume, she has worked on cars as an analyst and engineer, and she has worked in very traditional settings. But she's had a lot of different pieces to this. So we're trying to tell that story. That she's a generalist, but she can do it wherever you put her. And we focus on, she says, I naturally seek ownership and responsibilities. My love of learning is combined with a drive to continuously improve process and systems. So you can use I statements. And, it doesn't have to be like I'm this third person remote robot writing my resume. So I wanted to show you a little shift we did there. So here's another one. I put a star here because we're using the star format to tell her summary and her career story here. We're doing that situation, task, challenges, accomplishments, results, right? So we're using that star format here. With over 15 years of experience representing a wide variety of organizations and high-profile individuals, I've developed an expertise in building rapport across departments and with diverse populations, from the College of Law to the Consciousness to the Transformative Studies program. I have the exceptional, I think I may have done a type over there when I copied and pasted this, sorry, and changed the font. I have the exceptional ability to quickly assess the situation, create a strategy, and take action, dealing positively and proactively with unexpected developments and pivoting quickly. In addition, I have a longstanding success in interagency collaboration, project management, and staff development. As a result, I was asked to lead the COVID-19 Community Response Task Force and sit on the Diversity Council at JFK University. So you see that star method of telling the situation, the results, and the accomplishments in her career arch story and highlighting the relevant pieces people are looking from a communications manager right now. Okay, so I'm going to skip this one for the sake of time. I guess I wanted to show you this one where, again, you can be a little bit more creative. Jennifer is happily employed, I am happy to say. She started with 2 contract positions, found a full-time position. Don't shy away from contract. Number of my clients have transitioned into full-time employment through contract employment. It is a great bridge builder, and you look attractive to the next employer because you're still in the game, right? And you've got one more person for references, one more set of accomplishments. This is a little bit more of a creative version, not great for ATS, but in a PDF. And she was really strategic about applying to people directly, and it really worked well for her. And you can see it's very clean and kind of interesting. Okay, again, we use the star format for her. As Associate Director, Digital Fundraising, I added value to the digital team at Alzheimer's Association by leveraging my experience as a business analyst, a unique skill set within this team. From reviewing processes to writing test cases, I was able to identify opportunities to increase output and maximize collaboration. So what I should have highlighted a little bit better is that she dumped the overall summary here and just went with, here are my descriptive job descriptions that she felt branded her enough. And then what she did was focus on a little longer summary under each position. And we use the star format for doing that description of, here's what you really need to know about me in this particular position, and here's what I accomplished, my standout stuff. Okay, proofread, and then proofread again, and then have someone proofread it and then re-proofread it. The worst thing is when someone talks about attention to detail and communication skills, right? And then there's something wrong on their resume. People know we're humans, but be really careful, especially depending on the type of job you're applying for and the skill sets that you're trying to highlight. A couple online resume help resources that I recommend. The Mom Project is for working mothers, so it's a little bit specific, but they have a new resume builder that's pretty cool. Resume Now, Cultivated Culture, this is an ATS compliant for sure. JobScan, you can also compare with a job description, and really fine tuning those resume bullets compared to the job description. Resi Bullet is a neat one as well. Okay, when possible, you may have to go through the ATS, then try to find a way in. Do your research, dig deep. Hunter is a website that if you've got a company name, you can try and find real people's email addresses. You're gonna have to write a well-crafted email introducing yourself, but if you're feeling bold, again, search your LinkedIn for points of contact. Try to get that beautiful PDF version of a resume into a real person's hands. Okay, questions. I know we were going to talk about gaps in your resume was one of them. So I do have a blog post about that. I'll try and get that to you to share. If you send out to people that covers gaps in your resume. Again, most people nowadays are more humane, especially now more than ever. COVID's been humbling, right? That we are human beings with responsibilities beyond just our professional goals, right? And so most people do understand that there's some times where people can't work due to illness, caretaking, parenting, right? So the biggest thing is to own it, accept it, move on, right? Forward focused. So tell that career arch, talk about what you've been doing in the meantime, talk about what you've learned in terms of soft skills, right? Self-awareness, how you've grown as a person, whatever the case may be. It's best to kind of address this in a little bit, not talk about the gap, but speak to how you're beyond the gap in that career summary, and you can speak to it in your cover letter. There's good data that if your resume is not a perfect match for the job, but you have a well-written cover letter, recruiters will take a better look at you. I think the last survey was over 60% of recruiters said that that was true for them. So it is worth it to take the time to craft, again, a focused, individualized cover letter to the jobs you're really fired up about, that are a very good fit or is exactly what you're hoping to move to next, so that you can explain your skills and your strengths, acknowledge the gap, but move them past it and move them forward with confidence. Step into this with confidence. We are conditioned that we are, especially in America, we're our job, we're a title, right? And so it can be very, very painful when we lose our jobs. It can be very intimidating to step back into the workforce when you've been out of it. Again, get up to speed. Now people are using Zoom, get up to speed on the technology that people are using. Volunteer, again, use volunteer opportunities to polish on skills. Show you've got your head in the game and you're knowledgeable. Spend time with informational interviewing and networking with past colleagues or people who are currently doing what you want to do, and get some input for them so that you can walk the talk and talk the walk, right? When you're interviewing, would be my other tips. But don't let yourself to succumb to imposter syndrome. You are allowed to step back into all of those professional skills and attributes, right? So sell yourself with confidence. That's going to be the biggest thing that they're looking for. Can you hold your own again? Other questions?
Awesome. We've got one. If you do 100% of the job requirements, should you still apply?
Yes. 60% or better. Do it. Now, again, know that this is a more competitive job market than other time periods, right? So try to be strategic and manage your time well. So, be focused of where you're spending your time applying for jobs. But again, it's going to have to be a well-crafted cover letter, I think, to accompany that in most cases. But yeah, 60% or more, don't toss it out the window.
Another question, are employment agencies still helpful for job seekers? Many of the ones I've visited online have no jobs listed.
Yeah, I think they're pretty overwhelmed and pretty repressed, in the sense that in terms of hiring costs, less companies are going to pay to go through an agency right now. So I think it doesn't hurt to reach out. It's also, like we talked about in our networking one, this is planting seeds professionally. You might reach out to 10 recruiters right now and 9 months hear from one of them. So I wouldn't limit yourself. Again, manage your time, maybe put that as like lower level tasks. But I wouldn't rule it out. But yes, I wouldn't also be waiting, right? That thinking that that's where it's going to come from.
And then a final question, are there any websites that you can upload your resume to see if it's ATS compliant?
Yes. Cultivated Culture was one of them. Let me go back to that screen. Sorry. Cultivated Culture is one of them. JobScan. I like JobScan. That's a good one. I'll tell you the other trick. When you have your Word document, if you cut and paste and save that into a text document, it will show you what comes up strange, right? So if it's not a readable letter, you've got a symbol in there somehow, you've used a funky bullet point instead of just a regular bullet point, it'll come up as like a little box or gobbledygook. And you'll see, so when you put it into saved as a text document, that looks more like what it looks like to the computer. So that's an easy trick to use also. Because just be warned, with a lot of these, they're going to want your email. Someone's going to reach out to you, and that might be fine. But if you're not in the mood for that, then you might try using the text document trick and see if that doesn't help you.
And in case people aren't able to write this down, I will be sending a follow-up email with these links and these resources, along with the recording of. That would be great. That's awesome.
Sorry to interrupt. Sorry.
No, that's good. And it will have a recording of today's program as well. Any other questions before we close out? Christine, do you mind if I share my screen here for a bit?
Sure, let me stop sharing.
All right. I'm just going to share with everybody resources that the library does have for you in regards to job seeking and professional development. Let me hold on a second. All right, so this is our website, which I'll also send out in the email as well. And what's highlighted here is our programs in November. Dallas Job Seekers Club meets every week at this time, and next week we'll have Christine back again talking more about that STAR method for how to really rock your interview, because most interviews now they're going to ask you about specifics. Tell me a time when, and how to prepare for that. And then the next 2 weeks in November, we have Unlocking Doors and Jewish Family Service coming to discuss more relevant topics. And if you click here, you'll go to our events page, which will show you all of the events that we have coming up. You're also welcome to email, call, or text us with any questions. And we can go over your resume. We can point you to resources. We also try to collect some resources here for you, if that's helpful for you. The other things I want to point you to are our newsletter, which hopefully most of you are signed up for, which we send out every Monday and has a lot of great resources and reminders for upcoming programs. We also have an archive of all of our recorded events. So we have the past month of Job Seekers programs all online that you can watch again if you want to. And then we have flyers for hiring fairs and job openings locally. So we have a lot there, and we are always willing to chat with you through email or on the phone, and get you the information that you need. So let me stop sharing now. Looks like we don't have any more questions. I just want to thank Christine for coming. Oh,
sorry, I have one question. So if any of y'all are interested in the interviewing topic, if you can, before you go, pop it in the chat. If what parts of the interview you're concerned about, what things that you're struggling with, or questions you've had before that you're like, oh, I didn't feel great about how I answered that, or I didn't know how to answer it. So if there are any particular interview questions, please pop it in there, or I guess you could even email Hannah if something comes to mind, so that we can proactively address it for next time.
That is great. I'm copying all of those things over right now. If you want to put them in the chat with questions about interviews, that's a great. Yeah, and you are also welcome to email us email there in the chat, government@dallaslibrary.org. I'll remind everybody on the follow-up email as well. And then Christine, I'll get those questions over to you so we can have a really successful session next time.
Awesome.
Awesome. Okay, I think that is it for us today. Thank you everyone for coming. Hope to see you in the future. Hope to see you next week. We'll be discussing interviews. Thank you again, Christine. Always appreciate having you here.
You bet.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye,
Have a good day,
everybody.
everybody.